Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game created in 2014 by a man named Scott Cawthon. The game revolves around the robot bear named FreddyFazbear and his wacky cast of animatronic friends as they try to hunt down a security guard working at their pizzeria whose only form of defense are the cameras, doors, and lights found in their office. Also, this game ruined my life. I really like FNAF. You can tell because I mention it alongside Despicable Me in every single one of my videos. Except, unlike Despicable Me, my enjoyment of this is not ironic. I have dedicated way too much of my life to the Funny Bear franchise, but despite that, I would never admit to enjoying these games in a public setting with real people. Social interactions are already scarier than anything this franchise has to offer. I can't just admit that I know what Phasgoo is. Not even I like that I know what that is. So, unless I'm making some ironic joke about it or talking to someone I really know, I don't mention FNAF when I'm around other people. You could almost say that I keep my enjoyment of this franchise a secret. You want to know who else is keeping a secret? The Mimic is a new main villain of the FNAF franchise, who was first introduced and set up in the Tales of the Pizzaflex books, but his first real appearance in the games was in Ruin, where he showed up at the end for a chase scene. As you can probably imagine, having the main villain's entire backstory be revealed in a bunch of books isn't a particularly great storytelling method because, well, most gamers aren't going to indulge in FreddyFazbear literature. The only people that read the books are either way too obsessed with FNAF or 10 years old, and I'm neither. I can explain. Thankfully, it seems like either Scott Cawthon or the main studio developing the FNAF games now, Steel Wool Studios, recognize this issue, because on August 6, 2024, they revealed Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, a game that would actually bring the Mimic's origin story into the game canon. I was really excited for this game to come out, and when it finally did on June 13th, I bought it the minute it was available. This is something MatPat would do. I'm too far gone. Anyways, now that I played through the whole game, I think it's time that I let you in on a little secret. I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually. In fact, I've already played Secret of the Mimic 4 times, just because I wanted to get every achievement. Do you know what 4 consecutive playthroughs of Secret of the Mimic does to a person? Well, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm making a YouTube video about the game, so it can't be anything normal. Also, on the night of my 3rd playthrough, I had a dream where I had a real-life data diver, something from the game that I'll talk more about later, but the point is, I can even escape this game in my sleep. 2 nights after this, I had a dream about Sans Undertale, but I don't really think that has anything to do with this game. Okay, well, I don't really have anything else to say in this intro, so now it's time for me to finally talk about Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. Before I get into the game's story, I want to talk about its gameplay here, so I could share some of my thoughts without giving any major story spoilers, and also because I just like saving talking about the story itself for last. First of all, I want to get one pretty important problem with Secret of the Mimic out of the way, since it directly impacts a bit of the footage I'll be showing in this video. The game is not optimized very well. I mean, sure, it's not riddled with bugs like Security Breach, I never got stuck inside a wall or had Freddy do this, but there are very noticeable frame rate issues. Usually I'm not one to care about frame rate, I genuinely can't tell the difference between 30 and 60 FPS, but even I think that the occasional dips in frame rate were annoying. They didn't make the game unplayable, I swear these dips look much worse in the footage than they did in the game, but still, they shouldn't be here in a $40 game that's a new installment in one of the biggest horror franchises out there. That being said, I'm not exactly sure how common this lag is, because looking at footage from other people, the game seems to run just fine. I doubt this is a problem with my computer, since it can run games that demand much more power than this one, so I don't know, maybe I just got unlucky here. Oh, and of course, these frame rate dips were most prominent in the game's more cinematic moments, such as the chase scenes, meaning that I can't really use much footage from them in this video. So for those sections, I'll use footage from the most cinematic guy I know, Lewis Dawkins. But that man killed me, and now I'm stuck inside a puppet. Much like Security Breach, a majority of Secret of the Mimic's gameplay consists of you being in a room and having to stealthily evade an animatronic, who in this case is the Mimic, an endoskeleton that will use the various costumes found around Murray's costume manor to hunt you down. Unlike Security Breach though, you weren't really given anything to help you survive. There's no Freddy, no Phaser Blaster, no Phascam. It's almost as if Steel Wool realized that leaving the player defenseless makes the game scarier. Not only that, but the removal of items like these helps Secret of the Mimic work much better as a stealth game than Security Breach does. Distractions and hiding spots are mostly useless for half of that game, especially distractions, and then they become completely useless once you get the Phascam or Phaser Blaster, since they can stun animatronics. It also doesn't help that the animatronic AI in that game isn't particularly smart. Secret of the Mimic does the unthinkable though, as distractions and hiding spots are actually useful. I'm so glad these game mechanics have an actual purpose now. You see, the thing about the Mimic is that he's fast, like really fast. If he sees you, you better get into a hiding spot quick, because you cannot outrun him. So of course, it's best not to be seen by him at all, which is why the distractions are so useful. By the way, the game's distractions come in the form of buttons you can press, or find the mice that you can throw. The mice seem like they'll be the better option, but I'm pretty sure that the buttons have a higher chance of attracting a mimic than they do, and if you do use the mice, you need to make sure you throw them well, because if not, the mimic might see you while running over to it. Anyways, the best way to get the mimic off your tail is to use one of these distractions, go inside a hiding spot, and then run past him as fast as possible before he stops giving a distraction his attention. In addition to having to sneak past the mimic to move forward, the game has puzzles you'll need to complete, though most of them are placed in areas where the mimic can't actually reach you. Also, by puzzles, I mean there's two kinds of puzzles that are repeated multiple times. I don't really mind though, because I actually really enjoy them. Okay, I enjoy one of them, but the other is so short that I don't really care it's repeated like 5 times. This short puzzle is the one you need to do whenever you upgrade your data diver, which in gameplay is used to block off certain areas of the constant manner until the story requires you go to them. The puzzle is really basic, you just need to make this arrow turn all the zeros into ones by moving it up and down, though I still managed to mess it up a couple times because I'm stupid, I guess. The second kind of puzzle has you connecting these pipes in order to transport this liquid and restore power to an area. However, you need to connect these pipes fast, because if not, there will be an overflow and you'll need to restart. The time limit helps add an extra layer of urgency to this puzzle, though again, it's rarely placed in an area with a threat nearby, which does make it a bit less stressful. That being said, having to physically move your mouse in the direction you want to move the pipes to is pretty cool. In fact, now that I mention it, pretty much everything in this game requires you to move your mouse, which is a genuinely great feature. I find it really satisfying to move my mouse in order to use a crank or pull on a string to activate a generator. The generator is especially fun to use, since it's usually placed during a chase scene or when the mimic is really close by, which gives you incentive to move your mouse as fast as possible. Secret of the Mimic has a couple of sections here and there that vary from the usual gameplay formula that I want to talk about, but to do so, I will need to spoil a bit of the story. So if you're planning on playing the game, just know that I have mostly positive things to say about these sections and click off the video. Of course, after that, you should come back and keep watching this, because after all, you wouldn't want to miss any of my really funny jokes. The first of these sections is the Jackie chase, which I think is really well done. I expected nothing less from the bomb thief herself. I love how Jackie uses her extendable arms to make her presence known throughout the chase. A lot of chase scenes in horror games tend to be a bit underwhelming because the threat you're running from is behind you and not visible, so this is a really cool workaround for that. The part where you need to crouch down into the small area and pull levers to progress is also great. Usually I don't like it when a player is slow during the chase scene, since that just makes it feel a lot less intense, but slowing down really works here. Since you've got to divert from the main path and pull the levers before you're able to escape, in the back of my mind I couldn't help but think, was I too slow heading over to the lever? Is Jackie right behind me? The answer is probably no, since Jackie is pretty slow in order to actually give the player enough time to do everything, but that's not something I was thinking about in the middle of the chase. The next section that differs from the usual gameplay is in a Big Top Big Jaw showroom, featuring Big Top himself, who's the original version of Music Man. Pretty much you've got 3 carnival games to complete here, and whenever you do one, the lights go out and Big Top begins spinning around looking for you. Avoiding him seems simple enough, but there's a bunch of mannequins around the place, and there's a chance he'll make noise when you're nearby, alerting Big Top to your location. To escape him, you just hide inside of a locker and wait for him to stop looking in your direction. Once you make it to the other side of the room, you then do a power puzzle and then repeat that 2 more times. This section is pretty fun. I like how Big Top is slowly coming into the room as you do the power puzzle, but I wish there was more variety in the carnival games. 2 of them just have you shoot some targets, and the other has you throw balls at Jackie's teeth. I don't really think we needed 2 shooting minigames. One of them should have been replaced by like a Bonka clone or something, I don't know. After this is Big Top's chase, and this is easily one of the game's highlights. Everything about it is great. Big Top coming to you at the start, knocking over these tower things is cool, and so are the parts where he crashed through the roof. Not only that, but during the chase itself, he'll use his legs to suddenly block your path or crash through walls, which again is really cool, and it honestly kind of scared me a couple times. This is easily one of my favorite sections to come out of a FNAF game, which seems to be a common theme for Music Man, since his sections in Security Breach and Help Wanted 2 were also great. Following this is Pirate Foxy's Puppet Show, where you need to shoot these targets as well as the puppets that randomly show up near you. I think this part is good, though there are 2 glaring issues with it. Issue A, this is one of the sections with noticeable lag. That is not good. Issue 2, whenever you die, you have to listen to all 3 of the puppet show's cutscenes all over again. Now, don't get me wrong, the show is cute and all, and the first part of it is cut down, but still, I do not want to listen to it every time I die, something that happened quite a bit during my first playthrough because I had no idea what was going on. Awesome. After this is the chase with Nurse Dolly, and this is easily the weakest in the game, though there are still some things about it that I like. The chase starts by having you pull these levers to release trash, as doing so will push Dolly into lava. However, the chase doesn't end here, because as it turns out, the Mimic who's controlling Dolly somehow survives being submerged in lava and melts through the wall in order to keep chasing you. Okay, I know I said this is the weakest chase in the game, but like, come on, this is really cool. After this though, the chase just feels like your average horror game chase scene, but with some pretty good music. Nothing is really done here to remind the player that this thing is chasing you like the other 2 chases did, and the part where Dolly does appear in front of you can be easily missed. Things pick back up again once you enter this elevator though, as it breaks down and you have to fix it. I didn't mention this, but there was a section earlier in the game where you needed to fix an elevator, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, mostly because of how much it uses the mouse controls. You need to spin this crank, move these things up and down to rebalance the elevator. Saying it out loud, it sounds really lame, but it's fun, I swear. During the elevator repair, you get told how to fix it by Fiona, a character I'll talk more about later, but soon after, Dolly comes back out of nowhere, lands on the elevator roof, and begins trying to break in. Now, you need to remember the elevator repair instructions Fiona just told you, in order to increase its speed and crush Dolly with the roof. This part is great, having an animatronic covered in lava banging on the roof as you try to fix fixed elevator makes it a lot more intense. There are actually more parts of the game after this where they change the gameplay formula, but to talk about them, I need to get into major story spoilers, so I'll do so once I get into the story section of the video. Before I move on from the gameplay to talk about some random stuff about the game I found interesting, I want to quickly mention the fact that this game has autosaves, which after security breach is nice to see. The game was really generous with autosaves too. Anything you do that is even slightly important, except for whatever reason collecting items, is followed by an autosave. Sometimes the game is a bit too generous with saves though. The chase scenes here aren't particularly long, but once you get halfway through them, the game saves, which I feel is kind of unnecessary, but it doesn't really matter because it's pretty hard to die during the chases anyways. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention this, but the game was originally going to release with a VR mode, but now it's going to come in an update later down the line. You can definitely tell that the game was meant for VR thanks to the mouse controls and lackluster jump scares, which I'll get to, so I'm excited for when the VR mode comes out. I think delaying it was for the best though, since it allowed Steelwood to focus on making sure that the flat mode works well, and that's the way most people will be playing the game anyways. To end this section, Secret of the Mimic has some really good gameplay. I like the stealth mechanics, the mouse controls, the puzzles, and the chase scenes. I still think Help Wanted 2 is the most fun FNAF game to play because I'm the #1 Help Wanted 2 fan, but still, Secret of the Mimic is really enjoyable. Again, I've played the game 4 times. Well, now that I finished talking about the gameplay, it's time to talk about a bunch of random things that I don't have enough to say on to give them their own section.
Collect my pages, collect my circus, bite my bites, spend finance and Fridays.
Alright, so since we're talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, a massive horror franchise, I assume every single one of you are all asking me the same question. Is Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic scary? Actually, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a FNAF game. FNAF's scariest game yet doesn't really mean much when you think about it, but this game is still pretty scary. There's nothing here that's bone chilling or whatever, but the game had me on edge for most of the time I was playing it. I think this is mostly due to the fact that the Mimic can come from pretty much anywhere. You see, most of the rooms you enter are filled with costumes, all of which are motionless at first. However, sooner or later, a random costume will start moving, and a Mimic will start hunting you. Not knowing which costume would suddenly come to life had me pretty nervous at times, and this is especially effective during the workshop section of the game. Not only is the workshop filled with more costumes than most rooms, not only do these costumes have some of the scariest designs in the game, since most of them are unfinished and dirty, but also, you need to go in and out of the workshop multiple times in order to retrieve the 5 pieces of a spring-locked suit. That meant that I had to worry about what freaky costume would suddenly come to life in this section 5 times in a row. It's scary, especially when one starts moving right next to you, something that happened to me on my 3rd playthrough, though I unfortunately didn't record it. Oh, and once you're holding a spring lock piece, you aren't able to run, which makes heading back over to the safe room really tense, because the Mimic has more of an opportunity to jump you in one of his costumes. Speaking of the costumes, I think most of them have some creepy designs. I don't find FNAF characters scary whatsoever, with the only exceptions being Wither Chica and Glitch Trap, but this game changed that. I've always thought that costume characters were scarier than animatronics, so that's probably the reason as to why I find these guys so unsettling. I don't like knowing that there's a guy inside of Mike Wazowski. In my opinion, the scariest design of not just this game, but also the whole franchise, is the Jester Pomni Freak or whatever he's called. I really don't like him. If I woke up in the middle of the night and saw FreddyFazbear in my room, I'd clap, cheer, and ask for an autograph. But if I saw this guy instead, I'd die. I hate the Mimic's run too. It's so manic and freaky, and I don't like it. Of course, I can't talk about a FNAF game without talking about its jump scares, and yeah, while I think the game is scary, it is definitely not because of the jump scares. Ruin has what are, in my opinion, the best jump scares in the entire franchise. For the first time, they're more than just FreddyFazbear screaming in your face. The jump scares in the game have the animatronics actually attack Cassie, and for some, she even fights back, which is a really cool detail. I was hoping that Secret of the Mimic's jump scares would be similar to Ruin's, but they are not. Since this game was intended to release with VR support, the jump scares closely resemble the ones from the Help Wanted games, though I honestly think the jump scares are much more effective there, because Secret of the Mimics are way too short. I actually think that jump scares should be short, but not to this extent. There were times where I barely registered that I got a really spooky jump scare. Not only that, but the jump scares themselves feel pretty static, somehow even more so than the ones from the first game. The Mimic just shows its costume's face to you, and then it cuts to the film reel game over screen. That's it. The film reel effect is pretty neat though, I'll give the game that. The jump scare noises are a mixed bag. I'd consider some to be the creepiest sounding in the franchise, with Pomni's jump scare noise being a great example of this, but other noises? Well, they sound like this. What was that? Visually, the game is great, though I did notice some rendering issues here and there, especially on posters. I honestly prefer how games like Security Breach and Help Wanted 2 look, but that's just because I'm a stupid little baby that likes bright colors. I've said this before, but the soundtrack in FNAF games are incredibly underrated. Everyone talks about all the hit songs made by The Living Tombstone, or Random Encounters, or Extra Tuna, but I never see anybody talking about the songs from the actual games. My favorite songs from Secret of the Mimic soundtrack are Dark Rose Triple Shot Extravaganza, Back to the Iron Lung, Shapeshifter's Wrath, and A Poisonous Kiss. These are honestly some of my favorite favorite FNAF songs in general. One weird thing Steelwool does is give the trailers for FNAF games really good music and then just not post it anywhere. I don't understand why they do this. Listen to the music for Security Breach's first trailer. How can you not include this in the soundtrack? It's so good! Secret of the Mimic's trailer music is kind of weak compared to the others though, except for the part after Hand Unit stops talking, it goes hard. Another thing people don't give FNAF enough credit for is its comedy, because the games usually have quite a bit in it, and this one is no exception. Everything that comes out of Hand Unit's or Dispatch's mouth is very funny.
No, I almost died again. You need to send help. Get me out of here now.
Amazing. We'll look into it.
Okay, this is completely unrelated to FreddyFazbear, but I want to say that I really like the combination of horror and comedy. I don't know why, but combining the two usually leads to some really funny moments. I'm only mentioning this just so I could have an excuse to put in a clip for the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared Channel 4 show into one of my videos.
Well, hang on a minute. If I'm not mistaken, these pictures, they've all been framed.
Yes?
Nice. Framed pictures.
I like how during the part of the game where you're in the Springlock suit, if the Mimic finds you, he'll just start waving. That was pretty funny. The last thing I want to talk about before finally talking about the story is how Steelwool went about marketing the game, because it was pretty weird. Secret of the Mimic was announced in early August as a way to celebrate FNAF's 10th anniversary, when it finally became as old as its target demographic. A little less than a month later in September, a demo of the game was available to play in PAX West. Then, there was pretty much no more marketing for the game until February 12th, when its first real trailer came out. No major marketing material was released from September to February. This doesn't count. You'd think that the release of a gameplay trailer would mark the start of a marketing campaign for Secret of the Mimic, but nope. Once again, nothing else was released until there was a little more than a month left for the game to come out, when Steelwool remembered that they needed to make people aware of the game they were making in order for it to sell well, and started doing a ton of promotion for it. Every Monday, they would have these Mimic Mondays, where they revealed some of the posters found throughout the game. They sent a box of merch to John FNAF and Fusion Z Gamer. On Fridays, they'd post in-universe advertisements for Edwin's inventions that showcased the Mimic's abilities and revealed secret in-game screenshots. And, most importantly of all, they interviewed Dawko.
That's the only thing we can.
Dawko is probably the most wholesome person on earth, by the way. He's on Letterboxd, a site you should follow me on, and the lowest score he gave a movie there is 3.5 stars. Do you know how good of a person you have to be to make an account on the most pretentious website of all time and have your lowest rating be 3.5 stars? We could all grow as people by being a bit more like Dawko.
Don't try to make me angry with your noises. It is unacceptable.
In-universe advertisements are one of my favorite ways for something to get promoted. It's a great world-building method in my opinion. I don't know if I'm in the majority in thinking that, but whatever. Okay, that's really all I have to say for this section, so it's time to talk about the game's story now. Hopefully I can make Matt Pat proud. In Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic, you play as Arnold, a Fazbear technician sent to the abandoned Murray's Costume Manor to retrieve Fazbear property. Arnold is voiced by Kellen Goff because he's the Michael Kovac of FNAF. If he doesn't voice at least 20 characters in any project with this freak in it, the world will explode. Arnold is honestly my second favorite FNAF protagonist right behind Cassie. I like how he has actual reasonable reactions to the things going on around him, unlike Gregory, who was completely unfazed throughout the entirety of Security Breach because he's a little psycho.
Was that the bite of it?
Arnold's subtle breathing and crying noises that can occasionally be heard make his character feel a lot more human than Gregory, and Kellen Goff does a fantastic job at voicing him because, of course he does, he keeps showing up in these games for a reason. Anyways, Murray's Costume Manor was once run by Edwin Murray, a contractor of Fazbear Entertainment, though for whatever reason he's gone missing, which is why Arnold needs to go in there and return what belongs to the company. Guiding Arnold throughout the manor is Dispatch, who seems to be a human version of Hand Unit since this game takes place in the past. I'm glad that Hand Unit has a prominent role in the story again. He hasn't really done much since his introduction to Sister Location, and again, he's really funny here. After arriving to the Costume Manor, Arnold sits through a welcome show, introducing us to Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, who will occasionally be showing up throughout the game in the form of these stations to tell the player what to do in certain sections. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but I like the vibe the show gives off. It feels very, for lack of a better term, welcoming. Once the show is over, Arnold goes over to the security office and picks up a call from Dispatch, who reveals something quite disturbing. As it turns out, Edwin was working on an endoskeleton that can both adapt to costumes of any size and mimic voices and personalities. But unfortunately, something went so wrong, and now I can't do anything but sing a stupid song. Yeah, this mimic endoskeleton is pretty violent, and if he sees Arnold, he'll want to kill him, which isn't good. Anyways, Dispatch wants Arnold to retrieve the mimic schematic since it's very valuable and it's located in Edwin's executive suite, but in order to get there, Arnold will need to give his data diver executive permissions. Like I said back in the gameplay section of the video, the data diver acts as a key to the various rooms of MCM, with 5 different upgrades you'll need to get in order to progress through the story, those being security, repair, creator, admin, and executive. Once Arnold Arnold gives his data diver a security upgrade and restores the power, dispatch tells him that another upgrade station can be found in the warehouse manager's office, so he goes ahead and makes his way over there. Oh my goodness, it's the Mimic! This genuinely scared me because I really didn't expect it at all. Based off of what I heard about the game for the demo of it at PAX West, I thought the Mimic's first appearance would be when Jackie came out of her box. I did not think the Mimic would just come crashing through this crate. Speaking of Jackie, her section comes right after this as Arnold evades the elephant and comes into a room with a wind-up box. This is it, Jackie's box. No way.
Time to play!
Okay, either this is an intentional reference to Jackie's box, or Extra Tuna is a prophet, and judging by the quality of his songs, it's probably the latter.
But wait. I'm coming!
I am Baldy.
Oh, and I didn't mention this, but now that I'm on the topic of real art, once you get to the manor, you can hear a recording of Edwin, and he sounds like a silly little cartoon man, which shocked me. I listened to Jackie's box so many times that I genuinely thought he sounded like a dying old man. I can't express how disappointed I am.
Did that creepy old man just lick everyone on the bus?
Once Arnold opens the box and unleashes the clown power, he makes his way over to this room with a goofy robot guy. I love him so much, he's great. Arnold goes to activate this generator, but right before he can leave... What did he do to deserve this? Then the Jackie chase begins, and eventually, she corners Arnold in a vent. No, not the clown! What have I done?
I'm sorry!
Yo, the vent collapses and Arnold manages to live. However, he can't celebrate just yet, because somewhere in the manor, the Mimic is still controlling Jackie. Searching, stalking, hunting. Oh, what's that? Jackie doesn't actually show up in the game anymore after this? Okay. So Steelwool made a real-life Jackie for PAX West. They made the entire demo there revolve around Jackie. They made Jackie the poster character of the game, and yet she barely gets any screen time. I thought they learned after doing this exact same thing with Vandy and Security Breach, and yet they just do it again? I am not joking when I say that Jackie's screen time is only like 30 seconds longer than the duration of Jackie's box. Don't hype up a character if you're not going to put them in the game. The teaser for the game showed off this weird black and red Jackie without her party hat, and she's just not in the game. What was this supposed to be? Whatever, Arnold updated his data diver to give it the repair upgrade before getting a clown attack, so now he can head over to the big top showroom for the creator upgrade. While heading over to the showroom, you can find the game's first audio log, which I'll talk more about later, so all you need to know for now is that most of the game's lore is told through these logs. Anyways, Arnold goes to the big top showroom, Big Top does his scary chase thing, and now Arnold has to go to the demonstration theater in order to get the data diver's admin upgrade. However, in order to get there, he'll need to make a spring lock suit, and well, those don't exactly have a great reputation. Arnold manages to put the pieces together and makes his way backstage in order to get to the theater.
And condensed to fit your broadcast time slot, including commercial breaks. If right.
What was that? Putting that aside, Arnold finally gets to the theater and watches Pirate Foxy's puppet show. That's right, Foxy's here. He's from Five Nights at Freddy's.
So make sure you come aboard the SS Foxy.
Not only that, but Roxy's here too, meaning that despite the fact that she was introduced in Security Breach, she's been here since the start. Arnold watches the show and shoots targets to make it progress, but things aren't all going well, as for whatever reason, the theater is falling apart, and the platform with the admin upgrade station collapses. Eventually, Arnold's platform collapses too, with him crashing down in his springlock suit. He's dead. I mean, he has to be, right? Springlocks are incredibly sensitive, and this was quite the fall, so Arnold has to be dead, right? Oh wait, never mind, this guy's fine. You see, the game implies that the springlock suits used by William and Henry were much weaker than the ones created by Edwin, since Fazbear Entertainment would put lives at risk just to save a couple of dollars. Classic Freddy. Anyways, to talk about this freak, this is Dolly. She's meant to be a hospital nurse, and she's also in an X-Men costume worn by the Mimic. But for now, it seems like she's running on her normal programming. Dolly is trying to fix the springlock suit, meaning that she'll need to remove the foreign object inside of it, that being Arnold. And to do so, she's going to Blend him? Huh? What kind of sick operation is Mimic Boy over here running? Why is he trying to blend people Tartar style? Surely he knows that whatever foreign object that'll be in a Springlock suit is a person, right? Why did he program a robot to blend them? Did he just assume that a person would already be dead if there was a Springlock failure? Actually, that's a pretty fair assumption. Arnold hops out of the suit and continues forward. After learning that Edwin Murray invented recycling, he runs into Dolly once again, who's running on these tracks. Okay, if this animatronic is stuck to the tracks, then surely the Mimic taking over her shouldn't be such a problem. Oh. Arnold evades Dolly and finds another admin upgrade terminal in the doll hospital. After this is the Dolly chase, which I already talked about, so I won't be repeating myself here. There is one really cool thing about it that I want to mention though, that being that as the elevator is rushing up, about to crush Dolly, you can actually see the Mimic leave the animatronic before he gets crushed too, which is a really nice detail. Now that Arnold has the admin upgrade, he can go into the admin wing, find the executive upgrade terminal, and enter Edwin's office. But first, he has to go through the warehouse. It's Chica! She's from Five Nights at Freddy's! There's actually no boss fight with Chica. She's only used for the game's usual stealth sequences, which is kind of a shame, but hey, at least there's more Five Nights at Freddy's characters in his Five Nights at Freddy's game. Arnold manages to sneak past Chica and goes to the executive upgrade terminal. Finally, he gains access to Edwin's office and obtains the Mimic's blueprints. One thing I noticed is that here, Mimic is spelled as if it's an acronym, which I find pretty interesting. What does it stand for though? I don't know. Now Arnold has to go back to the security office, so he goes through a vent and takes an elevator to the basement. All that's left to do is walk through these doors, get to the other side of the room, and he'll be home free. Oh great, the tiger's back.
And he's living in my basement?
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what this guy is. I'll get more into my theories about him and the game in general later, but I don't think he's the Mimic, because he can teleport and make Arnold have hallucinations, which are two things I don't think the Mimic is able to do. For this section, you just have to stay in the light in order to prevent a tiger from killing you, and this is easily one of the scariest parts of the game. The fact that the game leaves you in the dark both literally and in terms of what you need to do makes this part really nerve-wracking, and Tiger Rock teleporting around the place whenever you stop looking at him is scary. Oh, and there's like 3 moments here where you need to grab this Star Freak, and these sections are especially scary because Tiger Rock can still kill you during these, and I never knew if he was right behind me or not. Eventually, Arnold makes it to the end of the room and gets to the security office. Dispatch tells him to put the data diver in the inventory tube system, and he opens the garage door to let Arnold leave Murray's costume manor. The game is over.
Arnold, there you are. We've been trying to get a hold of you all night. Why didn't you answer? Fazbear Entertainment has no other option but to let you go.
What? I just talked to you. You told me to give you the data diver and I could go home.
So you admit it? You misplaced company property.
No, I gave it to you.
Fazbear Entertainment will hold you personally responsible for lost or stolen property. What did you expect would happen?
I did everything you told me to.
Don't call us. Our lawyers will be calling you.
What? That's how the game ends? It's implied that the dispatch talking to us throughout the game has been the Mimic all along, which is a cool twist that I'll talk more about later, but then Arnold just dies? What? That's so anticlimactic, nothing even gets resolved. You know, now that I think about it, the final sequence of Tiger Rock kinda sucks as a climax. There's not even a final confrontation with the Mimic. If only there was some other ending that felt more like, you know, an ending.
What are you doing?
I mean, of course there's another ending. This is a Five Nights at Freddy's game. Scott Cawthon loves putting multiple endings in these to make people fight over which one is canon. I think it'd be really funny if they filmed multiple endings for the second FNAF movie and randomly changed which one would be in the movie after every showing. Just think of all the chaos that would ensue in theaters. By the way, this bad ending is really similar to the normal ending for Help Wanted, where Glitchtrap puts you in a Freddy suit as he dances to the music, which is a pretty cool callback considering the fact that the Mimic is Glitchtrap. Anyways, in the other ending, Arnold launches parachute on a security office's helper terminal, opening this vent in the office. Once he does this though, Dispatch changes. His voice becomes more serious and his dialogue strange. He says that Arnold isn't gonna make it out alive, and that if he had just handed over the Mimic schematics, they could have fixed things. He says that he thought Arnold would understand the situation. He calls Arnold a good dog. This dialogue is a bit weird, right? What did Dispatch mean by fixing things? The only reason Arnold was sent to obtain the schematics was pretty much just so Fazbear Entertainment could use it to make more money. What did Dispatch mean by saying that he thought Arnold would understand? What did Dispatch mean by calling Arnold a good dog? Also, the bad ending implies that Dispatch is the Mimic, and yet here that's directly contradicted, since he refers to the Mimic as a separate person, wondering what costume he'll stuff Arnold in. There's one point where Dispatch says that the Mimic might put Arnold in a bunny suit, because like a bunny, he's scared and stupid, searching for a hole to hide in. Now, where have I heard that one before? By the way, is this head meant to be a reference to Sans' Undertale? It's specifically the head of the most human costume in the game, and his right eye is blue like Sans. Maybe this is why I dreamt of Sans 5 days after playing this game. Can you tell I've played Undertale on Deltarune recently?
Ah, Undertale. That is a great game. It took me forever to beat Sans.
Eventually, Arnold gets out of the vent and back to the welcome show area from the start of the game, but now he's able to trigger the goodbye show. Doing so will reveal a button, and pushing it will bring down a platform you're standing on. Suddenly, it stops. I really like this part. Having the destroyed Big Top crawling down to try and kill you as a platform randomly stops, making you run to certain levers to make it move again before you die, is really tense. It's a shame it runs like this. Arnold manages to escape Big Top and enters the research and development wing, revealing a familiar face. FreddyFazbear. He's Five Nights at Freddy!
Hey kids! I'm FreddyFazbear!
Arnold goes to the generator inside of Freddy's head and activates it, which opens the curtain. Going through it reveals something truly shocking. The FNAF 1 pizzeria. Well, a prototype version of it at least. This obviously isn't the actual FNAF 1 pizzeria, but since it's in the research and development section, I assume it's meant to be a test version of the restaurant before it's officially built. Anyways, the Mimic is here too, wearing a costume that's a weird amalgamation of the FNAF 1 animatronics, which I like quite a bit, but I'm gonna be honest, I would have preferred if he was just wearing a Freddy suit. I know it's basic, but not only would that give Freddy something to do in his Five Nights at Freddy's game, but I also think it would have been cool being chased by a mimicified version of FreddyFazbear. Don't get me wrong though, I still like the freaky amalgamation, though funnily enough, I don't actually think any pieces of Freddy are a part of it. I really enjoyed this section of the game. Pretty much, you need to hop inside of these spring lock suits and go to these red lights in order to make Dispatch close the doors and slowly drain the pizzeria's power. It's a cool way to bring back that core gameplay feature from the first game. Also, I'm pretty sure 2 of these costumes are meant to be prototype Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, and this other one is meant to be prototype Monty, which is cool. I don't know what this costume is meant to be though. I think it's some kind of dog, so maybe Arnold really is a good dog after all. Dispatch continues with his weird dialogue here as he says, Fazbear will send another. Maybe that one will help me. Why is he referring to Fazbear Entertainment as if he doesn't work for them? What does he need help for anyways? Whatever, eventually Arnold drains the pizzeria's power and the day is saved. A new voice starts speaking.
You give me no other option. Enter. And here you are.
That's the Mexis machine. And it's living in my research and development wing? For those of you who have a life and don't think about Five Nights at Freddy's at least once per day, not that I can relate, this machine is the exact same as a Mexis machine in Ruin. In that game, the machine housed a strange rabbit whose main goal was to keep the Mimic from escaping the Pizzaplex. The only difference between the machine here and the one in Ruin is that instead of having Mexis written on it, it has Fiona, Edwin's wife. I think now's a good time to talk about what's revealed in the audio logs. Full disclosure, talking about a story told through these logs is a bit less straightforward than talking about the game's main story, so I might get a couple of things wrong here. I am not MatPat, I have not made 70 FNAF theories, and I have not been impregnated by Springtrap. If you want a good explanation for what's going on in the audio logs, then go watch Rye Toast or FNAF or again, Game Theory. They're like the Three Musketeers but for FreddyFazbear theories. Don't worry though, I'll try my best to put the pieces together. Murray's costume manor did not originally belong to Edwin, but rather his father. This will come back later. Soon after she starts working there, Fiona meets Edwin, and pretty much as soon as that happens, Edwin wants to record her voice for a project he's working on that'll be able to send messages across the manor. This project is revealed to be Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, who are actually voiced by Edwin and Fiona. Fiona and Edwin start dating, something that'll never happen to most FNAF fans, and eventually Edwin asks Fiona to marry him, which is really wholesome and all, but this proposal is heard through the Mr. Helpful Freddy robot, and that's really funny. Oh, and this same Mr. Helpful station has a recording where he invites employees to a dinner party since it's been a while since they've had one, and it's genuinely sad. The recording is short, but as it goes on, Edwin slowly stops doing the Mr. Helpful voice because he's sad that he's losing his friends. This is the second FNAF game in a row with well done emotional moments. I just wanted to get jump scared, but now I'm crying. We're not at that point of the story yet though, so back to what happens after the proposal. Fiona gives birth to David, and everything seems to be looking up for the family. All of Edwin's hopes and dreams are finally coming true. Just kidding, you've all listened to Jackie's Box, you know what's gonna happen. So Edwin's dad dies, leaving the company in his hands, which he's really worried about because he doesn't know the first thing about running a company. This, I think, is when things start to go wrong. It's time for Fall Fest, a carnival that is run by Fazbear Entertainment, though I could be wrong about that. I don't think it's ever said who runs the fest, but since it's advertised in things like Cursed Dreadbear, I'm gonna assume that Fazbear's is behind it. Fiona decides to go to Fall Fest because she wants to be there just in case something goes wrong, and something does. Previous games, specifically Hub 1 and 2, imply that a fire happened at Fall Fest, and it seems like that's the case because Fiona dies there. Not only is Edwin very saddened by Fiona's death, but now he also has to take care of David by himself. This will be quite difficult as Edwin spends most of his time doing work, so he decides to get a babysitter. However, instead of, hiring one, Edwin decides to make one, leading to the creation of M1, the first version of the Mimic. Both before and after all of this, Edwin is working on the Fazbear restaurant project, and it seems like this combined with Fiona's and later David's death is causing him to change for the worse. He seems to be getting angrier, more paranoid, but that paranoia might be for a good reason because as it turns out, Fazbear Entertainment is actively sabotaging Edwin. One of the mail logs you can find in the game reads, "We are almost there. I need the rest of the Murray staff contact info. The sooner the better. You get that for me and I can sweeten the deal. How would you like to manage one of the new franchise locations? Signed, W.A. No way."
It's William Monster! William Monster! Oh my god!
So while Edwin was working on a project for William, he was trying to get Edwin's employees to not only work for him, but also steal some of Edwin's work. Eventually, Edwin is the only person left working at Murray's Costume Manor. That's all I have to say for the audio logs, at least right now. Hopefully I didn't miss anything really important. Let's get back to talking about the endings now. Fiona, who in case you couldn't tell was the one mimicking Dispatch all along, tells Arnold that he needs to head over to Edwin's house and convince him to repair M2, the second version of the Mimic and the one that's been pursuing Arnold throughout the game. Doing this would be the only way to stop it. Arnold rides an underground car that takes him to Edwin's house, but somehow the Mimic followed him there. During this section of the game, you have to sneak around the house gathering film reels that relate to David's different birthdays. At the end of these reels, a number will show up, and if you combine all of them, you can put in a code here to open this door. Before I talk about what happens once you open the door though, I want to quickly talk about what's revealed in these film reels. First, we see how Edwin spent David's second birthday doing work instead of spending time with him, which seems to be a common occurrence. The next reel has David begin crying when he sees Puppet Roxy because Steel Wool is trying to gaslight people into thinking this character is scary. Gaslight? What is this, some kind of gaslight district? The reel after this shows what is presumably David's first birthday since Fiona died, but Edwin tries to make him feel better by saying that in a way, she's still with them. I wonder what he meant by that. Is that the Mimic? Okay, so remember how I said that M1 was created to be a babysitter for David? Well, somewhere along the line, it started mimicking Fiona. I'm not exactly sure how the mimicking started, but I have a theory. There's a secret audio log in the Tiger Rock area where Edwin says he heard someone that sounded like Fiona. He tries to get the voice to come back, which results in this. Fiona said this exact same line during a tape where Edwin is working instead of spending time with David, so I think that Edwin was rewatching these tapes around the Mimic, causing it to start, well, mimicking Fiona. Later, David ends up dying, and since Edwin got a version of Fiona back through the Mimic, he's going to try to bring David back too. He does this by using the M1 program to create M2, while transferring M1, or Mimic Fiona, into the Mex's machine. At least, I think that's what happened. There's never any evidence that two physical Mimics existed. However, it seems like Edwin eventually realized that these Mimic versions of his family can't replace the real Fiona and David, so he decides to get rid of them. First, he cuts all communications with Mimic Fiona, and then he does this to M2.
Stop. Not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
This act of violence is why the Mimic has been trying to kill Arnold throughout the entire game. He's simply mimicking what Edwin did to him. Anyways, the last tape reveals something very important. A ball.
Where is my ball? I'm running out on the road. There is a car, and this is going to hit me.
The game doesn't actually say how David died, but judging by the iconic ball, he probably got hit by a car like he did in the books, and of course, Jackie's box. Once you get the code and unlock the door, Arnold enters what was once Edwin's officer room. Here you can find yet another audio log, and playing it reveals Edwin's fate.
Test. Journal entry. Too bad the new power test was failed. Due to a minor detonation. There is damage to my office interior, as well as a small fire. Note to self, portable cleaner that gets rid of smoke damage. Better yet, a Cleanovac attachment. Help! M2! Response! Emergency! Call for help!
Daddy's business, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play?
Speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out.
I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond.
Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy.
M2, help.
This moment is genuinely messed up, at least for a FNAF game. The Mimic mimicking Edwin's neglect towards David back to him as he's crying out for help, presumably dying, is easily one of the darkest things in any of these games. Arnold goes to the computer in the office to access the surveillance room, which I only mention because on his terminal, there are two inaccessible files, the Alt-Fazbear designs and the Puppet designs. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what this means. My guess is that this is referring to the toy animatronics, since those were the original alternate versions of the classic characters, and the Puppet is mentioned here, who we already know is in some way connected to Edwin, since my grandfather's clock plays as you wind up Jackie's box. In the surveillance room itself though, there is yet another big reveal. In an earlier mail log, a cradle is mentioned, which is something that is supposedly able to stop the Mimic. Here, Arnold can activate the cradle, and at the top of the computer, you can find four very important words. Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage. Mexis. Okay, I've gotta admit, I didn't even realize that Mexis was revealed here when I actually played the game. The only reason I found out was because one day, literally right after waking up, I began wondering why the Mexis wasn't in this game, since Ruin implied that it was related to the Mimic. Then, I began thinking that the cradle was actually Mexis, so I decided to pull up a video from my favorite British person, Dawko, to confirm my suspicions, which is where I found this. These are the things I do upon waking up. I don't go outside very much. Once Arnold activates the cradle, the Mimic shows up once again, so he begins running away, as both Edwin's house and his costume manor begin collapsing. I'm not exactly sure where the Mexis rabbit is throughout all this. Either he just isn't here, or Arnold can't see him because he doesn't have the Vanny mask, which is how Cassie is able to see him in Ruin. It's probably the latter since Rabbit was in Help Wanted 2's Mimic update, but you can never really know with this franchise. Anyways, I think the chase scene here is pretty good. I like how you need to quickly pull levers to progress as the Mimic runs towards you like the Jackie chase. Running through the manor's tunnels as they're collapsing is cool, and I like the evil household appliances that randomly show up to block your path. They're such a funny thing to put in this grand climax. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this, but the in-universe advertisements made to promote the game imply that almost every single one of Edwin's inventions use at least a piece of the Mimic's code, which is why these appliances are trying to kill Arnold. This also explains why Big Top is trying to do the same. There's no way he's being physically controlled by the Mimic, since we see him rise from a pile of animatronic parts in the FNAF 1 pizzeria literally right after Big Top's final chase. Putting that aside, the Mimic manages to corner Arnold, but a platform falls on it, so he manages to escape and run back to his van. I genuinely thought the Mimic was gonna rip Arnold's head off. I forgot what franchise I was dealing with. So the Mimic was chasing Arnold just to get his data diver. Why? Well, I don't really know, but my guess is that it's because the data diver has the Mimic schematics, and having them would allow him to constantly repair himself. If this is a canon ending, which I believe it is for reasons I'll get into soon, it would explain why the Mimic looks so different in Ruin, a game that takes place many years in the future. Again, take what I say about the game's lore with not just a grain of salt, but a whole salt shaker, because I am dumb and stupid, so there's a high chance I'm getting stuff wrong. By the way, now that I mention it, I'm not sure if this is a hot take or not, but I much prefer the Mimic's Ruin design than his design in this game. I don't think this design is bad or anything, but he looks kind of naked, which probably doesn't make any sense since I'm talking about an endoskeleton, but just compare the two, do you see what I mean? Probably not. Oh, and to quickly explain why I think this is a canon ending, Murray's costume manor goes up in flames, which explains why we don't see it in any future games, and Arnold presumably dies, which explains why we don't hear from him again. If he lived, he probably would have reported FazBear Entertainment, revealing everything that happened inside the costume manor. Maybe Arnold wouldn't have reported them right away, but he absolutely would have done it once the company was under fire for the whole missing kids thing. And if Arnold was ruining FazBear's reputation, surely they would have put the events that happened during this game inside of Help Wanted's FazBear virtual experience, which was meant to make light of the missing kids incident to make FazBear Entertainment look innocent. Now, there is actually one more ending I need to talk about before finishing the video, but first, there are two things I want to find out. First of all, what is this tiger that's living in my basement? In the books, he's Tiger Rock and used as a costume by the Mimic, but like I said, he can't be the Mimic in the game since he teleports and stuff. So, he has to be some kind of supernatural being. What I think, and what I'm pretty sure is a general consensus at this point, is that Tiger Rock is meant to be David's ghost. This is because throughout the game, we learn that David has a toy of this tiger, and that it's his favorite one, so it would make sense that after death, he goes on to possess a costume version of it. And while I'm on the topic of things that aren't the Mimic, once you get the Data Diver's executive upgrade, you can enter the retail showroom, and if you head over to its basements, you'll find this thing. During this part of the game, you need to grab a star and walk around a dark maze looking for pieces to complete a power puzzle. It would be scary if it wasn't for the fact that Moon was really bright, so it's pretty easy to tell when it's coming for you. The Moon isn't the Mimic though. You can tell because it doesn't make any robotic noises, and in a mail log, it's revealed that somebody got trapped down here. So presumably, Moon here is just some guy that's gone insane and developed murderous tendencies. Again, a pretty dark concept for a FNAF game, and the lullabies Moon sings are kinda scary. Creepy sounding music really gets to me, I don't know why. The second thing I want to find out before moving on to the final ending is which characters originated from Edwin, which characters originated from FazBear Entertainment, and how FazBear eventually got a hold of Edwin's characters. Yes, I am about to discuss how a fictional company from Five Nights at Freddy's obtained its intellectual property. Like I said, I'm too far gone. Freddy and Bonnie fully belong to William and Henry. You can tell because MCM has no representation of these characters aside from in the research and development wing. Edwin was simply contracted to make the Freddy and Bonnie animatronics, and he has no ownership of the characters. Things are a bit less clear with Chica and Foxy. Chica and her restaurant, Chica's Party World, play a big part during the warehouse and admin wing sections of the game, but despite that, I don't think Chica is Edwin or Fiona's character. This is because there's a mail log that reads, "Dear Mr. Murray, Fiona is amazing. The client is very happy with her chicken designs. Their sales are through the roof." Here, Chica's Party World is described as the client, meaning that neither Edwin or Fiona created her. Maybe Fiona created a version of Chica, since the log mentions her designs, but I don't think she created the character. So, either Chica's Party World was already owned by FazBear Entertainment, or the company was purchased by them, similar to how Showbiz Pizza bought Chuck E. Cheese, which would explain why Chica can be found in the FNAF 1 section of the game. Next is Foxy, who I think does belong to Edwin, thanks to the whole Puppet Foxy pirate show. However, Foxy can also be found in the FNAF 1 section, meaning that FazBear Entertainment probably bought the rights to the character from Edwin to use him in their pizzeria. The other characters we see in this game that later get used by FazBear Entertainment just so happen to show up for the first time in Security Breach, those being Monty, Roxy, Music Man, Sun, and Moon. A poster mentioning the Mystic Hippo from Help Wanted 2 can be found in the game as well. I'm pretty sure FazBear stole all of these characters, since by the time the Pizzaplex is built, Edwin is either dead or missing, so he probably won't be doing much contracting work for the company. Also, Roxy, who was created by Fiona, has two different versions in this game. The first one being her pirate form found during the puppet show, and the second being a western form found in the backstage area before entering the admin wing. Judging by the collectibles you can find around the manor, it seems like Western Roxy was a more popular version, which makes sense because this design is much better than this one. Weirdly enough though, Western Roxy doesn't show up in Help Wanted 2, despite the fact that it has two Western themed minigames, with Chica and Foxy. I'm not sure if Western Roxy's exclusion is relevant to the lore in any way, but I just thought I should point it out. By the way, other versions of Roxy might actually have been teased back in Help Wanted 2, since the subtitle specifically referred to her as Glam Roxy. See, these are the kinds of things you notice when you play 20 hours of a Freddy game. Oh, and Mr. Helpful is of course an early version of Helpy, and I think he's a stolen character too, since Helpy first appears in Pizzeria Simulator, which again, takes place when Edwin is out of the picture. Miss Helpful died or something, I guess. I don't know why she never shows up again. And that brings us to the game's final ending. In order to get it, you first need to get every collectible in the game, and then run Moon.exe on a helper terminal. Once you do so, you'll start playing this really boring game where you're given multiple text options and have to select certain ones to progress. That was a terrible way to describe what you do here, but I spent 10 minutes trying to think of anything better and haven't had any luck. Every time you select something, there's like a 5-second delay before what you selected actually goes into effect. I get that this game takes place in the past and the computers were slow back then, but this is boring. It's 30 minutes of just hitting enter and waiting. There are a couple of cool lore drops here and there, like it's outright confirmed that a fire in Fall Fest is what killed Fiona. Security Breach Moon shows up, Fiona and Edwin are symbolized with the sun and moon, which I'm sure has big lore implications, and more stuff like that. There's plenty of things here that seem like they're really important, but again, I'm no map hat. I don't know what any of this means. Why are there so many owls? Owls? What is this? Some kind of owl? Also, at one point, you can enter a cave with a pirate ship and waterfall, which I'm pretty sure is meant to be a Goonies reference. I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but the pirate ship is the one thing I remember about that movie, and it caught my attention. There's a closet door you can open, and there's one instance where it's referred to as a closer door. I bet Steel thought nobody will notice this typo. It's a good thing I don't go outside. At the end of the minigame, Sun, or Fiona, gives your data diver glitch permission, which you can use to enter previously blocked off rooms in Edwin's house. After beating the whole game again, of course. Awesome! In the rooms, you can find tapes that you'll need to put in these tape recorders, audio players. Look, I'm not old. I don't know what these things are called. There's also some more audio logs in the glitch permission rooms that show the lead up to M2's creation. Pretty much, Edwin was mad at himself for neglecting David while he was still alive, and then when Fiona tries to convince him to make another mimic so the family can be together again. It's also shown how Edwin regrets letting David be raised by a machine that's simply mimicking Fiona, saying that he never wants to see her again. I'm not sure how or when he changed his mind and created M2, but an interesting thing to point out is that M1 tells Edwin that she is Fiona, implying that in some way, the Mimic, at least with the M1 program, believes that they are the person they're mimicking. Once you put all the tapes into the old people devices, a vent opens up, and following it leads you to a bedroom. David's bedroom. Here, Arnold takes the Tiger Rock plush you get after beating the game for the first time, David's favorite toy, and puts it on the pedestal.
Welcome to bedtime. Would you like a story to help you sleep?
For this section, you need to listen to the bedtime story Fiona and Edwin are telling David, and use these posters to click on the animal they're going to mention before the Mimic kills you. Once you finish, this happens.
The moral of the story is that friendship is the real treasure. Now it's time for bed. Your parents love you. Sleep tight.
Arnold has fixed the Mimic, reverting it to back when it was meant to be a replacement for David. What a wholesome ending. It's a shame it's not canon. That being said, I think that when the Mimic gets defeated in a future game, it'll be in a manner similar to this because, well, I don't think there's any way to physically destroy him. This guy got submerged in lava and came out perfectly fine. So that was the story of Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. Honestly, this is easily my favorite FNAF story yet. The characters are all well written, the twist that a person guiding us was actually a Mimic works unlike in Ruin, the story told through the audio logs is genuinely compelling, and most importantly of all, the game's story makes sense, doesn't contradict both itself and other games, and doesn't have a heavily teased villain that only shows up for 2 minutes. Oh wait. So, in conclusion, is Secret of the Mimic the best FNAF game yet? Honestly, yeah. I mean, you probably already knew I was gonna say that, since I'm probably gonna title the video something along the lines of Secret of the Mimic is the best FNAF game ever, but whatever. Like I said earlier, I prefer the gameplay of Help Wanted 2, since the minigame format makes it pretty replayable, and the minigames themselves are really fun, but Secret of the Mimic has a much better story and is a lot scarier. I can't wait for the game to get VR support, that's gonna be genuinely terrifying. Now, before I end the video, there's just one last question I need to answer. What is the Secret of the Mimic? I don't know. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what his titular secret is. Everything the game reveals about the Mimic isn't really a secret he's keeping. It's just kind of a thing you find out about him. So, unless I'm stupid, which I am, or there's some kind of secret canon I'm missing here, I think the Secret of the Mimic remains a mystery. Who knows, maybe MatPat will come out of retirement to reveal it, since Scott Cawthon probably told him what it was when they met up. Hopefully he isn't too busy with his whole Creator Economy Caucus in the House of Representatives thing. After all, what's more important? Making sure that creators are respected, or the FNAF lore? I think MatPat should use his government affiliation to give the new Pope a copy of Deltarune. Well, that's all I have to say here, so if you'll excuse me, I've got to go and do all of the things I usually do on a daily basis. This is because I am definitely me, and not the Mimic in disguise. Definitely. Bye, I guess.